Hello and welcome to K-12 TV, produced by the Minnesota Department of Education. My name is Alice Segren. Thank you for joining us today. As spring arrives, Minnesota students will be once again testing, including the MCA2, which will provide information needed by educators and parents to improve student achievement. This year, there have also been some changes to Minnesota's assessment system, including a new online science test. In the first segment, we'll talk about the required tests and any new changes taking place. Our first guest today is Christy Hovanets-Lassila, Assistant Commissioner of School Improvement and Accountability at the Minnesota Department of Education. Welcome to K-12 TV, Christy.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Tell us a little bit. I alluded to the fact that we have these MCA2s, and that is connected with No Child Left Behind. Tell us a little overview about them, when they're given, and maybe some of the new things about them this year.
Okay. Minnesota tests in reading and mathematics in grades 3 through 8, and in reading in grade 10 and math in grade 11. We also this year are testing for the first time in science in grades 5, 8, and high school at the end of biology or life sciences.
Great. So these tests then are for what?
We are required under federal and state law to assess our students to determine how well they are making adequate yearly progress for our federal requirement under No Child Left Behind, and also as a systems check for our state schools and districts.
And so then they can look at those tests, see how well they're doing. Also, the information is disaggregated, and you have subgroups of children too that we're also following. So if you have a student who is Asian, or a special needs student, or a student that's coming with English language learner requirements, we can also track their progress over time also. Is that correct?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And our website has a robust data display system that allows you to disaggregate data in different ways, including by different subgroups for racial and demographics, also for economic status, and students who may have disabilities or English language learners.
Now, I know my little granddaughter, who is in 4th grade, was real excited about taking the MCA2s. She just can't wait to see how well she does from year to year. But as a student gets a little older, they start to maybe take the test a little bit less seriously, because it isn't necessarily something that's going to go as a score on their transcript for the diploma, etc. But there is going to be something added that is going to make the difference between taking them seriously or not. And students are going to have to take the tests more seriously, and tell us why.
Well, this year is the first year that students in grade 10 reading will be taking the graduation assessment required for diploma, or the GRAD test. Now, this GRAD test replaces the basic skills test, or the BST, that Minnesota has had in place as a graduation requirement since 1996. This year, when students take their reading MCA2, we've actually embedded the GRAD test into the MCA2, so they're taking both tests at the same time. So the student will be able to have an opportunity to take the MCA2 and meet the proficiency requirements, or meet the cut score for the GRAD assessment to allow them to earn their high school diploma. And this is a requirement that went into effect for any student who is in 8th grade in 2005, 6, or later. These students took the writing GRAD last year as 9th graders. They'll be taking the reading GRAD this year as 10th graders, and next year these students will have the opportunity to take the math GRAD as 11th graders.
Now, Christy, tell me, what happens though if a student doesn't pass the GRAD portion of the test for graduation? Will that be it? Will they not be able to graduate?
Oh no, students will have several opportunities to retake the GRAD assessment if they do not pass it on the first time this spring. Just like we had with the BSTs, students will have an opportunity to get remediation at their school, and will have an opportunity to retake the test online several times before they actually reach graduation date.
So that's good news for the student.
It is.
And that's also very good for, well, for the student, in that, you know, this is really assuring the parent and the teachers and the system that this child is ready to graduate with some basic skills, at least, or GRAD requirements, and we think that that's really important. Now, we also have some other tests that we are allowed to give under No Child Left Behind. that actually address specific needs of certain students. And one is the MTAS, which is an acronym for our special education test, and then the MTEL, which is our math test for English language learners. Can you tell us just a little bit about those tests?
Yes. The U.S. Department of Education has permitted states to develop alternate assessments for students with significant cognitive disabilities, which is our MTAS, or our Minnesota Test of Academic Skills. Students have the opportunity to take the Minnesota Test of Academic Skills for reading and for mathematics if they can't access our general education MCA2 test, even with accommodations. So this test is really geared towards students with significant cognitive disabilities. It's a one-on-one administered test. It's not a paper-pencil test like the typical MCA, and it has links to the Minnesota academic standards, just like the MCA does. And then
the MTEL?
The MTEL is our mathematics test for English language learners, and it's for any student who is currently an English language learner who can take this math test instead of the regular MCA2, and it's a simplified language test, so that it's in plain English for students to be able to access the math content without a lot of extra English language burden.
Well, and that's really good for people to know. I think the field, the educational field, has been asking under No Child Left Behind to seek some flexibility from the federal government to have some fair ways of testing our children. And certainly our department has been very aggressive in seeking that flexibility. And we'll talk a little bit about the growth model that we're also developing this year too, that is also being approved by the federal government. But there's also a really exciting thing happening, and Minnesota is really kind of cutting edge on this. We are required, as you said, by the federal government to test students in science. It's not for accountability purposes, but we are to test them in, did you say third, fifth, and once in high school. And so we want to show people an example of this computerized test. It's not going to be a paper and pencil, and set us up for a little demonstration of one of the test questions.
Sure. It is very exciting. We are moving away from the paper and pencil testing in science, and in grades 5, 8, and high school after biology and life science, students will have an opportunity to take an online assessment. This is more robust than a paper and pencil test. It allows us to do things that we couldn't do on a paper and pencil test. Students will be able to watch an interactive or have an interactive assessment. They'll be able to watch videos that have audio associated with them demonstrating some of the science experiments. The responses are not just multiple choice items. We currently have constructed responses on our tests, but this is more dynamic. It allows students to drag and drop responses in their assessment and actually type in or key in answers and responses. And so the first demonstration you'll see is an example of our online science test with a photosynthesis item. And so we'll roll that first item here.
The intensity of light affects the rate of photosynthesis in Elodea, a plant that grows underwater. They will conduct the experiment in a room without windows.
So students will be able to watch and rewatch that video and respond to the question that they have listed here simply by clicking on the correct response. When they're ready to move on, they just clicked on the next button at the bottom. And this is an example of another type of item that we have. It's not simply a multiple choice, but you see the substances listed on the bottom there. Students drag and drop that to develop the appropriate photosynthesis equation. So it's not just one item response questions, it's a dynamic or interactive assessment for the student. If you want to click on the next one, in this particular example on the diagram, they're supposed to put an X on the part of the diagram that shows the primary function of photosynthesis. So students use their mouse to click on that particular part of the diagram. So if they wanted to locate
chlorophyll, they'd have to click and drag and indicate where that is.
Correct.
That's really great. We're running out of time right now. Oh, you want to do one more?
This is just the last example where students have the opportunity to just simply type in their response rather than
so it's not just multiple choice or true and false.
Correct.
Kids